The blueprint of the sacred drum, Heavenly Sovereign's relic. I'll take it. As Lin Dong's words echoed through the air, they drew the attention of many within the heavens and earth. All eyes were on the young man, who appeared to be no more than 30 years old. They all remembered the scene earlier when Fan Yunzi had attacked Lin Dong, triggering the appearance of the heaven-reaching divine army. It seemed this youth was not simple after all. Far away, tens of thousands of meters from Lin Dong, on the other side of the Great Thousand Arena, several figures stood suspended in the air, surrounded by an aura of freezing cold. They were members of the Ice Spirit clan. Is this the Lin Dong that the Grand Elder mentioned? One of the young men asked. Mid-stage Earth Supreme, and hailing from a lower dimension. He indeed possesses some skills, said an elderly figure standing in front of the youth. He was the third elder of the Ice Spirit clan, and as he looked at Lin Dong, he added, however, with only this level of strength, he might barely compare to the top 10 among the younger generation of the Primordial Divine Clan and the Myriad Spirit Divine Clan. The Grand Elder has become overly confident. I wonder, how does he compare to Brother Bingyun? The young man asked. Bingyun may be the next candidate for the Ice Spirit Clan's leader, but he is currently in seclusion, striving to reach the mid-stage Earth Supreme. In this regard, he is slightly weaker than Lin Dong, the third elder said. But the Grand Elder is currently investing all the clan's resources into Bingyun, trying to help him reach the mid-stage Earth Supreme within 2 years. Afterward, he will attempt to push him into the late-stage Earth Supreme within 5 years. At that time, when Bingyun commands the 2,000 Ice God heavenly armies, he will be invincible under the Heavenly Supreme. Third Elder, how feasible do you think the Grand Elder's plan is? The young man inquired. Not sure. The Grand Elder only told us to follow his orders, but many of the reasons are unclear to us. However, there's no doubt that Lin Dong is targeting Binghuan. The third elder said, whether the Ice Spirit clan can rise again depends entirely on the Grand Elder's strategy. Hee, seems like some people are interested in these blueprints, Qing Yin remarked, looking at Lin Dong from not far away. His eyes narrowed slightly, and a smile crept up at the corners of his mouth. He then addressed the crowd. You have 10 breaths of time. If no one else wants the sacred drum Heavenly Sovereign's blueprint, it will belong to this friend of mine. Wait. At that moment, a voice rang out from the opposite side of Lin Dong's group. The speaker was a man dressed in a blue robe, with a large black drum strapped to his back. His eyes burned with a fiery, intense battle intent. Isn't that the Little Drum King of the Great Thousand Continent? Little Drum King? I heard he has an older brother called the Great Drum King. Both brothers are battle formation masters. Upon hearing this, many were taken aback. After all, everyone knew what a battle formation master represented in the Great Thousand Worlds. A battle formation master with strength barely reaching Earth Supreme, with a sufficient army, could easily become invincible beneath the late-stage Earth Supreme. In the ancient world-ending war, it was recorded that a super battle formation master could wipe out an entire lower dimension with a single strike. Seems there's more than one person interested in the sacred drum Heavenly Sovereign, Qing Yin said with a smile as he looked at the Little Drum King, who was trying to contest Lin Dong for the blueprint. This friend, the Little Drum King said, his arms crossed arrogantly in front of him as he looked at Lin Dong. I know you're after the sacred drum heavenly artifact. To put it simply, for certain reasons, my brother, the Great Drum King, and I both desperately need this sacred drum, which was left behind by the sacred drum Heavenly Sovereign. Upon hearing this, Lin Dong gave a slight smile and stepped forward, looking directly at the Little Drum King. Then, I wonder what kind of promise you are prepared to offer. I will kill 2 mid-level Earth Sovereigns, and I already have the accomplishment of slaying 1 mid-level Earth Sovereign. The words of the Little Drum King, like those of Featherlight Elder, stirred the heavens and earth. After all, everyone knew how difficult it was to slay a mid-level Earth Sovereign. The fact that the Little Drum King had succeeded once made it plausible that with his brother, the Great Drum King, they could kill 2 mid-level Earth Sovereigns. This undoubtedly gave him a strong advantage in the bidding. 2 mid-level Earth Sovereigns, you say? Lin Dong murmured softly. However, after a moment, he said calmly, in that case, I also need that sacred drum. Bluffing, You can't do it." The little drum king sneered coldly at Lin Dong's words. He knew that Lin Dong himself was at the mid-stage of Earth Supreme, capable of handling a mid-level Earth Sovereign. Moreover, behind Lin Dong, there were two Earth Supreme warriors who were only slightly weaker than him. However, it would still be a challenge for Fan Ling and Fan Yunzi to defeat a mid-level Earth Sovereign together. Thus, two mid-level Earth Sovereigns were already the limit of what Lin Dong and his group could handle. The sudden addition of two lower-level Earth Sovereigns, wasn't that just empty bluster? Do you want to try? Lin Dong looked at the little drum king, narrowing his eyes slightly, a smile curving at the corner of his lips. "Humph, my drum army isn't here. How can I try?" The little drum king sneered. "Heh, there's no need for both of you to make a move. If you want to test whose strength is greater, it's not difficult." As soon as the little drum king's words fell, Qingyan Qian, standing on the Great Thousand Arena, smiled. He then made a gesture to a group of primordial divine army soldiers in the mountains on the outskirts of the arena. Seeing this, their leader slapped the ground with his palm. In that instant, the earth cracked open, and the entire primordial divine army soared into the sky. This was the pagoda divine army of Qingyan's clan, numbering around 30,000. Roar! Tens of thousands of pagoda divine army soldiers shouted as they soared into the air. The terrifying battle intent exuded from them was powerful enough to shake the heavens. For a moment, the sky seemed to be on the verge of collapsing. Then, a clear, hearty laugh echoed through the world. "I've heard that you two drum kings are quite insightful when it comes to battle intent. Today, allow my pagoda divine army to lend you a hand." A figure shot up into the sky. He was the commander of the pagoda divine army, Qingyan Luo. With a slight wave of his hand, boom, 30,000 pagoda divine army soldiers, 30,000 supreme warriors, roared across the sky and hovered around the little drum king. They then severed their connection with Qingyan Luo, returning everything to zero, preparing for the little drum king to command them. Battle formation masters were entirely different from typical battle commanders. For a battle formation master, achieving a tacit understanding with a large army was quick and effortless. Of course, fully unleashing the full potential of an army required some time for adjustment. But the starting point was different. If a battle formation master was willing, they could easily synchronize with an army to 70 or 80% of its full power. The so-called adjustment was simply about refining the final 10 to 20%. Seeing the 30,000 divine soldiers arriving, the little drum king was taken aback. He hadn't expected the Qingyan divine clan to hand over such an army so easily. Of course, he was certain that this army would only obey his commands when dealing with Lin Dong. Is clan leader Qingyan asking me to use this divine army to fight him? The little drum king chuckled. If that were the case, with his strength at the early stage of Earth Supreme and the 80% synchronization with the pagoda divine army, even a mid-stage Earth Supreme would be no match for him. Heh, it's settled. And little drum king, this divine army isn't for you to fight the martial ancestor. Qingyan Qian smiled faintly, and then spoke a line that surprised everyone. Next, whoever can take my strike will receive the relic blueprint of the sacred drum, heavenly sovereign. Hearing this, Lin Dong frowned, and the little drum king's expression changed. A strike from a peak heavenly supreme at the late stage. No matter how much he commanded the pagoda divine army, he wouldn't be able to block it. Was Qingyan Qian joking? Meanwhile, the Great Thousand Alliance leader, Nan Tianzi, furrowed his brows. He knew that Qingyan Qian's actions were probably testing Lin Dong's strength. After all, the Primordial Divine Clan and Myriad Spirit Divine Clan already knew that Lin Dong and Xiao Yin were regarded as potential turning points for their lower dimension alliance. There's no need to worry. I know what I'm doing. Qingyan Qian reassured the little drum king. Since clan leader Qingyan has everything under control, let me join in on the fun. A voice suddenly rang out, followed by the appearance of an elderly figure with a cane, swiftly flying out and reaching the outskirts of the Great Thousand Arena. Good deed, count me in. Another voice echoed through the air as a man with strength at the Mid-Earth Supreme stage stepped forward. This was a rare opportunity to engage with the Primordial Divine Clan. Even if he couldn't withstand Qingyan Qian's strike, there was no need to worry about being in grave danger. as Qingyan Qian had said he would hold back. Moreover, being able to claim he had received a blow from the clan leader of the Qingyan Divine Clan was undoubtedly a significant boost to his reputation. It would be a small gain, and if he succeeded, it would be a big win. Everyone knew what the relic blueprint of the sacred drum, Heavenly Sovereign, was. Either way, accepting the blow would be a win, so why not? No one else stepped forward after that. All eyes were on Lin Dong, Little Drum King, the Crutch Elder, and the Last Man. Who among these four would be able to take on Qingyan Qian's strike? Swish, swish, swish. Little Drum King, along with tens of thousands of Pagoda Divine Army soldiers, shot up into the sky, reaching over 100,000 zhang in height. The Crutch Elder and the man also soared upward. From there, they might create a huge commotion. Only at such high altitudes could the destructive power be dispersed. Be careful, Ling Qingzhu said to Lin Dong, who was preparing to take off. Lin Dong nodded. Then, with a flash, he turned into a streak of light, shooting toward the high skies. At the moment, Little Drum King, leading the Pagoda Divine Army, stationed himself at the western horizon, holding his staff. The Crutch Elder hovered in the northern sky, while the other man sat in the southern sky. In his hand, a jade ring materialized, which he tossed into the air. The ring rapidly expanded, and in just a few breaths, it transformed into a massive silver ring thousands of zhang wide. The man sat cross-legged atop the giant ring. Those with keen eyes had already recognized it as a mid-grade earth artifact. Whoosh! Lin Dong's figure pierced the air, reaching the 100,000 zhang high sky. He positioned himself in the east, each of the four standing at a different cardinal point. Below, in the Great Thousand Arena, Qingyan Qian stood quietly, his gaze fixed on the four in the sky, particularly Lin Dong. He knew that there was a young man named Xiao Yin who had not yet arrived. Originally, he had intended to test the potential of both these youths, but now, he could only begin with Lin Dong. Are you all ready? Qingyan Qian's voice amplified, reaching the heights. Everyone's gaze turned upward. It was clear that the auction process for any item at the Great Thousand Assembly was always intense. Unlike regular auctions where the highest bidder wins, here, what mattered was bravery and strength. Only these two qualities would attract the attention of superclans like the Primordial Divine Clan and the Myriad Spirit Divine Clan. In the sky, Little Drum King slapped his hand backward, sending the giant drum spinning toward him. Then, he struck it with his palm. Boom! A heavy, resounding drumbeat echoed through the air, shaking the surrounding space. The drum waves reverberated, reaching the tens of thousands of Pagoda Divine Army soldiers. At the sound, their hearts raced, and the accelerated heartbeat sent their blood into a frenzy. Boom! Boom! In that instant, the battle intent of the Pagoda Divine Army erupted explosively, transforming the sky. The clouds churned, and thunder raged. Even Lin Dong, on the opposite side, was slightly stunned. He hadn't expected Little Drum King to be able to activate the entire Pagoda Divine Army's battle state with just a single drumbeat. Was this the terrifying power of a battle formation master? No wonder Little Yin and Little Mink had proposed assembling a battle formation army. In the sky, the battle intent quickly coalesced, and a towering black tower, thousands of zhang tall, appeared above the Pagoda Divine Army. At this point, anyone with discerning eyes could see that the drum Little Drum King wielded was no ordinary artifact. This drum not only rallied the army's spirit, but also helped concentrate their fighting will. And this was just an earth artifact. If it were a heavenly artifact like the one the sacred drum Heavenly Sovereign wielded, how terrifying would that be? Below, Qingyan Luo looked up at the massive black tower in the sky, nodding slightly. He had to admit that Little Drum King was quite capable. While the spirit of the Divine Tower wasn't as solid as the one he had formed, Little Drum King had only just gained control of the Pagoda Divine Army. Alright, to be able to unleash over 80% of my clan's Divine Army's power on my first time leading them. Below in the Great Thousand Arena, Qingyan Qian wore a faint smile. Then, a voice rang out from his mouth, echoing across the auction continent. Everyone, stay where you are. Do not move. Qingyan Qian's voice was like thunder from the heavens, resounding across the entire auction continent. Upon hearing his command, everyone stood frozen in place. They all knew that the power Xun'er was about to unleash would likely be massive in scale, and anyone who moved might be caught in its wake. The consequences were anyone's guess, but no one doubted that a top-tier expert at the late-stage, heavenly supreme level like him could easily level the auction continent with his power. In the Great Thousand Arena, Xun'er slowly raised his hands, then waved them toward the distant horizon, one to each side. Seeing this, many powerful figures in the sky dared not move, realizing that Xun'er had already unleashed his power. However, after standing still for several breaths, they noticed nothing unusual in the air. Everything seemed as usual. Could Xun'er's hand wave have just been a bluff? But the four figures standing high above, in the deep void millions of miles away, Lin Dong and his companions, did not think so. From their vantage point, at such a height, they could see things below that no one else could. And what they saw left them stunned. Far in the distance, in the four cardinal directions of the horizon, four fist-sized objects slowly rose. These four objects were millions of miles away, yet it was precisely these seemingly small objects that made Lin Dong and Little Drum King's hearts tremble. Impossible! The man looked at the objects rising far in the distance, his face covered in cold sweat. Without a second thought, he bolted toward the ground below, abandoning the competition. The Crutch Elder and Little Drum King were equally horrified, but unlike the man, they didn't choose to give up. Lin Dong's gaze grew incredibly serious. Their reaction was because they knew that seeing these fist-sized objects from this distance meant something. When these objects drew closer, their size would likely be staggering. They were four continents, each with a diameter of tens of thousands of miles, low-level, minor continents. The four continents floated in the sky, three of them slowly moving toward Lin Dong and the others. Their movement appeared slow, but it was actually rapid, the illusion of slowness caused by their enormous size. The fourth continent sank slowly, for the man who had abandoned the competition. This was perhaps the most terrifying power Lin Dong had ever witnessed. Xun'er had moved 3 or 4 continents from millions of miles away. Though they were all small, low-level continents and clearly abandoned, the power they represented was enough to make any expert below the late-stage Earth's supreme shudder. As the man shot downward from high in the sky, abandoning the competition, it stirred up a ripple in the sea of people below. Soon, countless powerful figures turned their gazes toward the distant sky. When they saw the 3 continents steadily approaching, everyone, except for those who had already reached the heavenly supreme realm, couldn't help but gasp. What kind of terrifying power was this? Whoosh! The 3 massive continents hurtled through the auction continent's sky, passing through the air from a height of millions of miles. The sheer speed, thousands of miles per second, stirred up the clouds in the sky and created a massive storm, while the spiritual energy in the air was compressed into huge, oppressive waves, howling in the high sky. The continents continued to move toward Lin Dong and his companions, and after several minutes, as the immense shadows gradually enveloped the Great Thousand Arena, they passed over the heads of the countless onlookers. No one could imagine the devastating impact such colossal objects would carry. Just one of these continents would be enough to give any expert below the late-stage Earth Supreme a splitting headache, and even some who had reached the late-stage Earth Supreme felt their scalp tingling. Could Lin Dong and his companions truly withstand such a force? Though still several thousand miles away, the pressure from the wind that came with the continents was already making Lin Dong and his companions' robes flutter. At this speed, the continents would collide with them in just a few seconds. In the western sky, the heavy and heart-wrenching sound of battle drums echoed, and in that instant, tens of thousands of Pagoda Divine Army soldiers poured all their strength into the Divine Tower. Immediately, the tower's size rapidly expanded. Tens of thousands of zhong, hundreds of thousands of zhong, and even millions of zhong. At this moment, the Divine Tower had reached half the size of the continent. Normally, larger objects would lose power due to the dispersion of their energy, but this time, it was purely a battle of brute force. This unexpected turn of events caught the 3 of them by surprise. Meanwhile, facing the continent charging toward them, The elder with the crutch didn't hesitate. He threw his crutch into the air, unleashing all his spiritual energy in an instant. A loud shout followed. Divine crutch. Clang. A burst of brown light erupted from the crutch, and in the blink of an eye, the crutch expanded rapidly. In just one breath, it grew into a massive crutch several million zhang in size. As the crutch enlarged, a supreme Dharmakaya, intentionally magnified, appeared behind the old man. This Dharmakaya was a frail old man with his eyes tightly closed. His enormous body stood several million zhang tall, hovering in the void. Without opening his eyes, he grabbed the enlarged divine crutch. As soon as his eyes opened, a terrifying force erupted. This wave of power was clearly something only the top 30 Supreme Dharmakayas could possess. The massive Supreme Dharmakaya, holding the giant divine crutch, slammed it with the greatest force toward the continent, both carrying destructive power capable of obliterating the world. Meanwhile, Lin Dong's side was the calmest. Facing the incoming continent, two purple golden dragon wings unfolded behind him. What followed shocked everyone, as Lin Dong didn't even use his Supreme Dharmakaya. Instead, at an astonishing speed, he charged toward the continent. The collision between the two was on entirely different levels. Lin Dong's actions not only stunned the strong beings in the heavens, but even the Great Thousand Alliance leader, Nan Tianzi, and Qing Yanqian were momentarily dumbfounded. Even they couldn't predict what Lin Dong was about to do. Has this kid lost his mind? On the ground below, amidst a sea of scattered rocks, Fan Yunzi and the others broke into a cold sweat for Lin Dong. Did he think the massive continent would disintegrate easily due to its size, and that with just a bit of external force it would collapse? But the situation was different. First, the speed of the continent's approach was astonishing. Second, how could the power of a late-stage, heavenly supreme-level expert cause the continent to disintegrate? The only one remaining calm was Ling Qingzhu. Having followed Lin Dong for over a decade, she knew that Lin Dong would never do something without confidence. Meanwhile, high above Auction Continent, in the deepest reaches of the sky, several 100,000 miles from the ground, a figure sat cross-legged in the void. Dressed in a cyan robe, the man appeared strikingly handsome. His eyes shimmered with a faint purple-gold glow, and a dragon's pressure, greater than that of other dragon clans, emanated from him. He was the leader of the true dragon clan, his strength on par with that of Qing Yanqian. Since the start of the Great Thousand Assembly, he had remained hidden in the void, observing the powerful beings arriving here. He had come deliberately to meet Lin Dong, while Qing Yanqian had come to see Xiao Yin. But it seemed only he would have his wish fulfilled, since Xiao Yin had yet to make an appearance. Let me see just how capable this future star, whom the lower dimension alliances are all watching, truly is. The handsome man murmured with a smile, then, with a playful motion, extended a purple-gold dragon finger and gently pointed toward the void. Whoosh! At that moment, a subtle force passed through the void and acted upon the continent, charging toward Lin Dong. In an instant, Lin Dong's expression changed as he sensed that the impact from the approaching continent had suddenly increased by nearly half, in a strange and unpredictable manner. However, Lin Dong had no way to retreat. He was now just a few thousand zhang from the continent, and the collision would happen in the next moment. At this time, Lin Dong's hands formed a familiar, intricate seal, one that had not been used for years. The seal was complex, changing rapidly, but by the time the seal was completed, the continent had already reached Lin Dong's front. He quickly slapped both palms forward, seizing the perfect moment. The power carried by the continent crashing toward them was terrifying. So, when Lin Dong's palm struck the surface of the continent, his palm instantly sank in. As his palms sank in, a roar echoed from his throat, and his eyes became as wild and crazy as a beast's. Great wilderness,